Hi everybody, I'm Barb Owen of HowToGetCreative.com, and today we're going to play with distress crayons. I just got them and I thought, I'm just going to film playing with them and see what I think. So maybe if you haven't tried them, maybe you'll learn something, and if you have tried them, maybe you can share with me how you like to use them. Alright, so these are the 3 sets of the Distress Crayons by Tim Holtz and Ranger that have come out in 2016. They're the earth tones, the bright, and the vintage colors. And I'm just going to pull them all out so they're all ready to play with. They come in these nice little plastic wallets for storage. However, I'll probably throw those away somewhere so that I don't have to keep worrying about putting them back in the right container, if you know what I mean. It's just easier to have them out where you can just get a hold of them. Okay, so here they are, all ready to use. These are smooth, really smooth pigments, and pigment is a key because the pigment allows them to work over dark colors, so Tim says. He also says that they are water reactive for watercoloring and smudge effects. So we're going to try all those out, okay? So the first thing we're going to play around with is I have a couple of pieces of paper that I pulled out of my Dilutions journal. And they're from the same, they're the same thing, the manila colored paper. And I have one part of the sheet coated with white gesso and part of this sheet coated with clear gesso. And this part is uncoated, and down here at the bottom, I've done a poor job, but I did it anyway, stamping a flower. I'm not a great stamper, so so there you go. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to just try some stuff with the gesso, over the gesso, and also the non-gessoed. So I'm just going to put down some pigment, same color. I can tell you right away that it goes on more smoothly on the non-gessoed side rather than on the gesso side. So let's see what it feels like here. This is really smooth on the clear gesso. And again, it should be exactly the same because there's nothing been done to those sides. But just as a comparison on the same sheet so I have it for future reference. Okay, so I'm just going to use my finger and see about the smudgeability on top of the gesso. That smudges out nicely. Doesn't want to smudge so much on the plain non-gessoed area. Top of the clear gesso smudges out nicely. And just so I have the comparison here, we'll just try it, just so we have it. Okay, so on the white gesso and the clear gesso, you get 2 different effects. On the clear gesso, it maintains its vibrancy more than it does on the white gesso. The white gesso kind of turns it into a tint, so that's good information to know. That if you want to alter the color, make it a lighter color, that's one way to do it. Okay, I'm going to clean off keep my finger clean so that as we work through different colors, I don't contaminate colors there. Let's try with another color. Let's try this color. The first color I used was Peacock Feathers. That's Peacock Feathers. This one is Seedless Preserve. So let's use this. And let's put some of this over the top of that one. Okay, so we'll do one piece at a time. Okay, so again, blending over the peacock feathers. So you get a blend between the 2 colors, which is kind of cool. Okay, so again, not much blending there. But one on top of the other, that seems to blend out. So you get a 3rd color there. So that's nice. Good information. All right, let's see what it looks like on the clear gesso. So again, some of the color overlapping the peacock feathers. And we'll do it here just just so we do, just so we have comparison, in case I want to use these in some kind of future application. I've got all my information there. I do stuff like this all the time where I test my supplies, and I usually do it in my art journal because then I know that that's where I can go to look to see, see my results. In this case, these were papers that I had been playing around with, so they were already out of my journal, so I thought, I'll just use the other side. Okay, so again, you can see that this has a much darker appearance over the clear gesso than it does over the white. It blends, it blends on the non-gessoed paper. I'm finding it does quite well, but it doesn't want to smudge out as much around the edges on the non-gessoed surface. Okay, so while we're doing that, how about if we try it on white watercolor paper? Okay, so this is white watercolor paper, and this is from the Ranger watercolor paper, and it has a textured surface on one side and smooth on the other, so we'll try both so we can see how both of them work. So let's use a couple of different colors. This time we'll use picked raspberry, and we'll just do a circle this time. Okay, so picked raspberry, and we'll do it on the other side as well here in a minute. So this has had nothing done to it. This is just the watercolor paper as it comes straight from the package. All right, so we've got that one. And then let's use some mustard seed, and I'm going to just go around that and maybe put a little bit on top of it. And smudge the colors together. So not a lot, a super amount of smudging there. Let me get some water. So I'm just going to get some water on my finger. Just to see what it does. So the water on the watercolor paper does smudge it out a little bit more. So this is on the smooth side. So let's go to the rough side. I'm going to do the same thing. So immediately you can see the texture of the paper. And that moves very well. Pigment moves really well on that side. And then we're going to put some of the yellow around that. Yeah, that moves much better on this side. For whatever reason, the pigment moves a lot more easily. Okay, so adding some water. Just with my finger. Not using a water brush or anything fancy, just my finger with some water. That moves around quite a lot. It's kind of cool, actually. Okay, so now let's go to, so we've done that on both sides of the watercolor paper, which has two different surfaces on this particular watercolor paper. Let's go to black and see what it does on black. Now, they have a white crayon. This is going to be Picket Fence white distress crayon. So let's see what this does. Okay, so there's the white. I'm going to put down quite a bit of the crayon. And I've wiped off my fingers, so I'm going to try to get all the pigment off. So hopefully I've got a relatively clean finger here. So it stays pretty, now this is just black cardstock. It stays, I mean it goes to gray, but then it wasn't a real strong white when it went down. So, you know, the color really did not change very much. Let's try a different color. This color is Twisted Citron. Okay, so it doesn't smudge a whole lot on the over the cardstock. It kind of goes in and sits, it soaks in or whatever into the cardstock pretty easily. But the color does not change when I've smudged it versus just marked it on the cardstock. So they're not real bright as they would be on, let's say, the white, but that would stand to reason that on white or on the manila, either one, that the color would be much brighter. So you can see the difference. Okay, so there we have, we've used on black, we've used on white, and used it on manila. So let's see what happens now. Let's use a different color. Let's go with Festive Berries. Let me clean off my finger again, get the color off, just in case I can't resist getting my fingers into it. Okay, so now let's use some of this Festive Berries, and I'm just going to put down some color in both places, gessoed and non-gesso. This is the clear side. And I'm just going to use a water brush, and let's see what happens. So that really moves out. I mean, you can just keep going. I wonder what this will do up here. Yeah, that'll even move up there with the water brush. Okay, let's try the non-gesso side. It moves. Yeah, it definitely moves. Not as much as over here, but it does move. And we could, keep working that till we smoothed it out even a little bit more. Okay, what about up here? Because this has been sitting for a little bit and it still moves around a little bit. Okay, so we got that. All right, let's try it on the white to see what the color looks like, what the color difference is. And we're going to use, again, the Festive Berries. And we don't need, well, let me go ahead and do it just so I have the test. Just so I have it for my, just for my record. And I'm not adding a lot of water to this. This is just whatever water wants to come out of the brush. I'm using a Pentel water brush. So that moves that pigment a lot. And as expected, it would do exactly the same thing as it did on the other one. So it moves, but it doesn't blend out as much. Okay, so I got that. Now let's go down here, and one of the things that these are supposed to do is you're supposed to be able to put these on a craft sheet or a surface of some kind and pick them up and paint with them. So hey, let's try it. So I used, this is Rusty Hinge. Okay, so this is Rusty Hinge, and the other one I'm going to use is Spiced Marmalade. So we're going to put some of these two colors, just scratch them on the craft mat. And I'm going to pick this up. This is the Rusty Hinge. Now, one of the things that Tim talks about with these is that after they dry, that they do not smudge like a traditional oil pastel. So I have a space where I've used them in my journal, so we're going to take a look at that in a minute. Okay, so that looks pretty good. That works pretty well. What if we want to put a little bit of vintage photo, which is not necessarily the best color in the world to do this with, but we're going to just pick up a teeny bit and just see about putting some shading around the center of this flower. And blend it just a little bit, just to give it a little more something something. And then I'm going to go right in here with a little bit of mustard seed right into the middle of that, just to brighten it up just a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Not necessarily the best color combination in the whole world, but hey, we're just testing. So we're going to put this on here, same color, Rusty Hinge. a little bit of the, what was the other one? Spice marmalade. Gah. Okay, a little bit of spice marmalade. Teeny little bit of vintage photo around the outside of that center. Just to see if it will blend in, which it does. It blends in quite nicely. Okay, so that's picking them up and using them like they were kind of a watercolor crayon, which worked well. That's over the clear gesso. All right, let's give it a quick shot here over the white gesso. And I need a little bit more rusty hinge. They're very soft and creamy. Which I have to say I like that aspect of them. But I think like any new supply, you know, it takes a little bit to get used to what are the properties of that particular supply, how do you use it, and then how does it fit into what you like to do, you know. Okay, so we have that one. Quickly just scrub a little bit at this end, just so I have it on this paper, so I have a good comparison. Going kind of quickly and a little bit sloppy just so I can get it on here. Moving back and forth between the colors. Okay, so that worked okay. So let's take a look at those. So this is the clear gesso. Well, let's do it this way. Clear gesso on, or white gesso on the left. Clear gesso on the right. So this is, they look very similar, and then no gesso on here with a little extra color. Bonus. I'm sure that came from up here. Anyway, so that worked nicely. So I think that's okay. That's pretty cool. So let's do on this one, let's go back to the black for a minute, and let's put some red on here, which may not be my best color choice, but I just want to see how it works. So we've got some red on there, and I'm going to put a stencil over it and use a baby wipe and just see what happens. And so you do get some effect from that with the black. Not a lot, but you get some. Okay, let's use the white. Use our white watercolor paper. This is the rough side of it, so I'm just going to put some of the red on here. And I'm going to use my water brush. See how it blends out on the watercolor paper. Now you still see the texture through the watercolor paper. So just dragging that around. Okay, so we've got some Festive Berries on there. Let me hit that with a heat gun just a little bit. We're going to put some on the other side. So a little bit of heat just to dry up some of that water. And we'll try it on the other side as well here in a minute. Let's go over it with, let's use a fresh baby wipe. So this is over the watercolor paper, so we'll see how this works. All right. So some difference, not a lot, but some. All right, let's do it on this side. So this is the smooth side. Once again, I'm going to add a little bit of water to it just to see how it moves around. Doesn't move as well on the smooth side of this paper. All right, now I'm going to put the stencil over it and see what happens. And so there you can see what it does with the on the smooth side. So different effects. You're not going to get the real crisp detail with this that you can get with some other mediums, but it would make an interesting background layer. So, you know, it's a different effect. Let's see, what else? That's pretty much, you know, what I wanted to try. And then I did use some of them in my journal, just playing with a page in my journal that already had a couple of designs on it. So this already had the design, and this is a screen print that I was doing, and then I filled in using some of the distressed crayons, filled in the petals. So I put the pigment up here toward the top and then just mushed it out there with my finger. Alright, so it's been in here for a while, so I'm going to use a white paper towel. And there's very, very little pigment coming off of that. I mean, the tiniest little bit. Now, if this were, so you can see maybe a little bit of the yellow. If this were a traditional oil pastel, that would come right off. There's a little bit of the green, but very little. Very little. And this was on uncoated paper. This was just the plain Dilutions paper. Did not have any gesso or anything on that. So that's, you know, you can do some cool things with them. You know, I think it just depends on what you like, how you like to work, and you know what way you like to work in your journal and stuff like that. I think what you don't want to do is work with them and expect them to be like anything else, because they're not gelatos. They're not crayons, traditional crayons. They're much creamier and move much more quickly than like a wax crayon. They're not that. They are their own thing. And so I think that anytime you try a new thing, you have to experiment with it. Do things like I've just done and make yourself notes and go, yeah, I can see where that would be good. No, I don't think I like that aspect of them. They're better for this than that. So anyway, am I glad I got them? I am. I like them. I love the color palette. And that is one thing you cannot beat with Tim Holtz, is his color palette. They're wonderful. So anyway, I think I like them. So I'm going to keep using them. So I hope that helps. And I hope that you've enjoyed seeing me play around a little bit and give you some ideas about maybe some things you can do with distressed crayons. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.